To the Aboriginal Protector, Mr. Crank. I am writing regarding the progress of the new boy you sent us. After a shaky start, he is learning to read and to write. He has a passion for Christ, and I feel that he may even follow in my footsteps.
And that is a clip from The New Boy. I'm delighted to say we've been joined by its star and it's one of its producers, Cate Blanchett. Thank you very much indeed for talking to us. Is this your first film since Tar? I think it is.
Yes, I think it was. I think it's so long ago, actually. It all feels so long ago. The world is so cattywampus that I've lost sense of time. And, you know, of course, yeah.
What was that word you used? The world was what?
It's probably in the English dictionary, cattywampus.
Do you know what that is?
That's a new one to me.
The world was so cattywampus.
It is cattywampus.
What does it mean?
Well, just sort of at odds and ends, like turned upside. Yeah, discombobulated.
Hey, okay. This is great. This is an education. We're learning something. So introduce us to the new boy. Who is the new boy? What is the new boy?
What is the new boy? Well, the new boy is played by Aswan Reid, an extraordinary young Indigenous actor. And the film centres around him. From colonisation onwards, there was a reprehensible program of, and I use this in quotes, breeding the black art, where young Indigenous kids were taken off country and invited to assimilate into white culture. So this young boy is taken during the Second World War, is taken off country and dumped into a monastery that is where a priest has just died and has been replaced by a nun who is now officiating mass, who is trying to protect the boys from either becoming cannon fodder or going to become basically slave labour on farms. And
the nun that you mentioned is, of course, yourself. This is
Sister Eileen.
Sister Eileen, and she's not your average nun, is she? What kind of a nun is Sister Eileen?
Well, I mean, I think she's a nun in great conflict. She's any nun with a secret has just amplified her probably innate sense of Catholic guilt. But she's somebody who's when you meet her at the beginning of the film, she's experiencing great spiritual doubt. And in a way, I think she's looking for a miracle. And into her lap comes this young boy with an incredible sense of Indigenous spirituality. And once he arrives, all of these very small and then quite large miracles happen, so that she begins to think, well, perhaps he's her saviour, perhaps he is a Black Christ.
So the film's directed by Warwick Thornton, who also wrote it, who made Samson and Delilah and Sweet Country. Can you tell us a little bit about him and why Warwick Thornton is important?
Warwick is one of the great Australian cinematic voices. I mean, he was recently, for this film, yet again, as a cinematographer, which is where he began, recognised by Camera Image, won the Golden Frog for his cinematography on this film. So he shoots, he writes, he directs, and he's able to work from intense personal experience and observation as an Indigenous Australian, but yet somehow extrapolate stories out that have a sort of a fable and like quality. This film certainly does, but also a universal points of connection. And it's been really fascinating, actually, traveling with this film to various festivals, starting off at Cannes and going to Toronto, and just to see the relationship that audiences have had with a very personal story of Warwick's. Cultures that have been colonised and cultures that have done their fair amount of colonising, and it's and to see the different points of reference that they take from him as a filmmaker. But he's a filmmaker that I've always wanted to work with. I was blown away by Samson and Delilah. I hadn't seen it was the first time I felt that a contemporary Indigenous Australian perspective was really brought into the mainstream.
If I've got the history of this right, Cate, it's another one of the films which is, although it's not about COVID, obviously came about because of lockdown, in as much as it gave you a lot of time to talk to Warwick Thornton. We all had long conversations with people over laptops and so on. I wonder,
yes.
Did this emerge out of lockdown? Will you look back on this as something that happened because of it?
Yes, I think so. I mean, obviously it was an intense and difficult time for millions and millions of people, and we don't wish it on ourselves again. But we are quite stupid as a species. But it's, it was a very fruitful creative time, I think, because we weren't concerned with outcomes so much. We were more interested in dialogue and process. And I think we're seeing that brought to bear on the cinematic fare that's come out in the last sort of 18 months. I think that they're very particular films, very unique films that don't seem to be made from the same cookie cutter. And so the conversation with Warwick and I and my partner, Andrew Upton, began late night, rambling conversations where we found points of connection, obviously coming from being Australians, but yet having very different cultural experiences. But yet we were interested in the overlap. And one of those was the Catholic Church, which, of course, I've always been. My father died when I was quite young, and I turned to the Catholic Church, even though I wasn't Catholic, in the for the ritual, for the symbol, in the hope that the great hand of God would come down on my shoulder and, he'd say, "It's all right, he's playing golf. You'll see him in 70 years." And that didn't happen. And so I then flung myself into nature. And so there was so much overlapping that Warwick and I had. And then he quite, with a lot of trepidation, I think, and it was a great act of trust, said, "I've got this project, which I haven't looked at for 15 years. And I wrote it when I was quite angry. Would you and Andrew take a look?" And we loved it. We felt it was incredibly haunted. It was mysterious. It had a central protagonist who was silent, and the landscape, which we all love so much. And I think that's why there's so many incredible Australian cinematographers. The light, the landscape in Australia is just so unique. It was a huge character in the film, so it felt like a no-brainer. But yes, it absolutely came out of conversations in lockdown.